You were awarded the Bronze Star.
That's correct.
As well as a Purple Heart. Could
Yes.
you expound a little bit on the actions or the incident that led to that award?
Well, I think the Bronze Star was more of a, you were there for the siege and all this bad stuff happened, so you got that. Eddie's Silver Star is a different story. That's from...
And I do want to hear that
We'll
story.
go into that later. That's a whole grade above. The Purple Heart was another one of those accidents of nature. I mean, we were taking casualties, and we were running from... We had a little underground bunker that the four of us slept in, and as soon as we heard chopper blades, we'd run up the catwalk to the triage bunker. And we were taking pretty heavy fire, and after a while you can tell the sound of a mortar versus a rocket versus an artillery shell. And we heard this whoosh come in, which signified it was a mortar, and it seemed like it was coming pretty close. I didn't realize that it blew up right under my backside, so to speak. What I remember the most is the concussive force, if you will, of the explosion blowing me down the steps into the triage bunker. I had no idea that I had actually had broken skin. I was more like, poof, flying through the air and wondering where the heck that came from. And then, and actually the truth is I didn't even know that anyone even entered my name into the casualty log. Until a couple months later I found out about it. But it's one of those things that you always remember. And I think I should mention, because I think it's the funniest part of it, I was actually wounded on February the 29th of 1968, so that on the lighter side, I always joke that I can only talk about it every 4 years.
Right. You leaped on leap day, right?
Right.
Leap year.
Yeah.
Tell me the story, the miraculous story, if you could, or recount it, of Lopez, the wounded Marine who just wouldn't die, essentially.
Well, I think, to be honest with you, since the book has come out, that's probably the thing I get asked to talk about the most. It's clearly the most dramatic pages in the book, and Eddie will tell you that even though I singled out the Lopez story for this book, we all had other similar experiences. The bottom line is this. This was at the Dong Ha combat base, not the Quezon combat base. When the choppers were coming in with casualties, they would radio into the triage area and give us 3 numbers. As a matter of fact, a friend of ours wrote a book called 20, 10, and 5. That meant 20 walking wounded, 10 litter wounded, and 5 dead. When the chopper landed on the helipad, our whole triage building was on one side, but across the helicopter pad, over in a more remote area, was what was called Graves registration. The KIAs went there, and the wounded came into us. And again, the sorting process took place. I happened to be the triage surgeon that day, and Lopez was clearly the most severely wounded of the litter wounded, and we put him on station 1. We began working on him, and I won't go through the entire drill, but suffice it to say that, as is always the case after so much experience doing this, we have a routine that the team goes through in extremely rapid fashion. Putting in large intravenous lines, putting in a breathing tube, putting lines in the groin to infuse blood, if necessary opening the chest to massage the heart. Everything by the team happens literally in a matter of seconds and minutes. So we did all this to Lopez. We had actually opened his chest to massage his heart. Because so many of the badly wounded Marines are, if you will, bled out. They have no blood in their system, so their heart's this big, and you literally have to grab it and massage it to try to get the last few ounces of blood out. So we went through this entire resuscitative effort with him and could not produce a pulse or a blood pressure. And I can't give you the time, but perhaps 20, 30 minutes, I finally said, I'm sorry guys, he's dead, take him to Graves registration. So the litter bearers would pick him up and go across the helipad to Graves. We were proceeding with the other casualties, and perhaps 10 minutes went by or whatever. They came running back in with the litter and said, this son of a gun is moving. They put him back on the litter. So we did the entire resuscitative effort a second time. Everything. Massage his heart again, breathing tube, pump blood, the whole 9 yards. Another, whatever, 20, 30 minutes. And I said, I'm sorry guys, but I mean, he has no vital signs. The guy is dead. And they took him back again. Rest of the story you can kind of guess, but whatever, minutes later, They came rushing back in. You have to understand that these are combat Marines, okay? As are the litter bearers. So when they came back in the third time, they were not happy people. They kind of said to us, this SOB is moving and you better take care of them. And in my wisdom, knowing the Marines as I did, I thought, you know what, I think I will. I'm not sending him back. So we resuscitated him for the third time. The whole drill all over again. And I produced absolutely nothing, no vital signs. So I thought, you know, if I send this guy back over there, they're going to assassinate me. So I called over another surgeon, you remember Pete Parker?
Very well.
I said, Pete, look at this guy, check everything. So he went over the whole thing. He said, Jim, he's dead. I said, Pete, I know he's dead, but I want you to take him back to the operating room and operate on him because I don't want to send him back to Graves registration. He said, Jim, he's dead. I said, Pete, I'm the triage surgeon, which means that day I'm the boss, okay? I said, take him back and operate on him. And he, I don't want to say what he called me, but he took him back, okay? So when we got the other casualties straightened out, I thought, I'm going to drift back there and see what's going on. Well, I go in the operating room. Pete's still looking daggers at me over the screen. The anesthesiologist is sitting there looking at me like, why did you send this dead guy back here? And I'm just standing there. And a few minutes later, the anesthesiologist said, I think I feel a little pulse here. A few more minutes later, he said, I think I got about 60 here. And then a minute later, you know, I think I hear a faint blood pressure, maybe 60 over 40. As the minutes went by, then all of a sudden, you know, his blood pressure is 120 over 80 and his pulse is 80, and now Pete's operating, you know, sewing up holes in his belly and so forth, because he already had chest tubes and a breathing tube. So he finished repairing all the holes in his belly, closed them up. Long story short, the next morning, Lopez is sitting up in the ICU, wondering what all the fuss is all about. And we medevaced him to Da Nang. Now, you know, everybody wants to know what's the explanation, and I have no clue. I mean, I think it's a humbling experience, and I think you just come away from it saying, you know, I don't care what your faith is. At some point in time, you say, you know, there's a stronger force out there than I can manufacture in my lifetime. But Lopez went where he went. The sad part is that you can imagine how many Lopez's were in Vietnam, or even how many Lopez's are on the wall here in Washington. We have no way of knowing what his ultimate fate was. I mean, I'd kill to know, but we're never going to know.